So good afternoon and welcome to this webinar. This is a webinar focused on a topic which I think a lot of people are either one, a little bit worried about, two, completely burying their head in the sand, or three, running for cover from. So this is a topic which I felt it was pertinent to cover at this stage because there is a danger that we can be looking at this particular topic and thinking, okay, I kind of understand what Google Analytics is, but I don't really understand why I should be interested in Google Analytics 4. Well, as I'll explain as we go through this session, the reason that you need to be interested in Google Analytics 4 is because your current version of Google Analytics will no longer exist as of July next year. So I'm going to explain to you what you can do about it. Now, one of the very interesting things is that because of the little nuances around Google Analytics 4 and some of the decisions that Google has taken, it's already too late if you haven't done what I'm about to share with you. Okay, so it's a little bit of a sobering thought, and I've fallen into this trap as well. I planned back in the summer to do this for all the websites that I'm either responsible for, that I host, or that I have for myself, and I kind of left it. I buried my head in the sand and thought, well, it'll be okay. I'll catch up and do it. And here we are in the middle of October, and I'm going to be losing data as a result of leaving it this late. But it could get worse because you could leave it beyond this point. So what we're going to talk about in this session is actually what you can do right here, right now. So this is a very practical session because you will have possibly, if you have access or admin rights to your Google Analytics for your business, and you are responsible for tracking, monitoring your website. That is, in essence, what Google Analytics is all about. It is the de facto standard. It is the best in class. I mean, in my view, it is really the only service that you need, or at least it was, because Google have already reminded you, if you're in that situation, time and time again, that it's going to be changing. So what we have right here now as marketers is the opportunity to run in parallel two forms of Google Analytics. So Universal Analytics, which is what we have here today, and Google Analytics 4, which I'm going to share with you some of the benefits of what is coming, but also some of the inevitability that it's not going to be the same as we've always had. Now, Google Universal Analytics has been around for literally decades. So those of us who have monitored websites and have been really used to doing deep dives into some of the ways that our customers and our visitors have been interacting with our websites are very familiar with some of the technologies, some of the opportunities to monitor conversions, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be a whole new world for you because it is very, very different on the other side. So if you've received an email like this from Google that says, hey, now is the time to get the new, more intelligent Google Analytics experience, it's here. And they're describing this as the next generation of Google Analytics. Now, that would imply, I guess, if you don't read between the lines, that it's going to be bigger and better. Well, actually, arguably it's smaller and it's a little bit more focused, should we say. You're not going to be seeing a lot of the features that you have become used to. Now, if you haven't had that email, when you log into Google Analytics next time, you will see across the top a little blue bar, which will say that it's no longer going to be processing your data as of the 1st of July next year. Now, of course, for a lot of us, we will have probably left the situation thinking, oh, okay, fine, so I'll do it next year because it's not here now, it's from the 1st of July. Now, unfortunately, if you don't set up in advance, you will be losing data. Anybody who hasn't set this data up prior to the 1st of July this year will have gaps in their data next year. And I'll explain how that's going to work and why that is the case. Now, Google will say, well, it's your fault because, we've been warning you. And as I've said, I'm not preaching here because I've fallen into this trap as well, but let's deal with what we have today. So I'm going to explain to you how you can get Google Analytics 4 and how you can run it in parallel with your existing Google Analytics today. Now, I know that all of you listening will be working off of different systems, so I'm going to try and be as accurate to your scenario as I can, but obviously there is going to be a little bit of a generic flavor to this because obviously everybody's setup is different. Everybody's working on a different platform, but I'm going to make some assumptions that I'm going to go with the critical mass here, and I'm going to give you an example based on a WordPress website, for example. So that's what you're going to be seeing as you go through this, but the principles are going to be quite similar. And then once we've got set up, once we've figured out, and I'll talk you through the story of, getting Google Analytics 4 up and running and operational on your site, then we'll talk about some of the differences so that if this is something somebody else is doing on your behalf, because you don't actually own the analytics and you're not the administrator, but you're a receiver of the reports, then you'll be able to then understand the different style of reporting that is going to happen. Well, it's literally happening today, but it will be the only style of Google Analytics reporting from July next year. Okay, so let's get this thing set up then. So you've logged into your Google Analytics, and I've just got a screen grab on the page here of a typical setup, and you will obviously know this if you're familiar with it. Now, what you will see is if you click on the Let's Go, or if you click on the left column there, you'll see GA4 Setup Assistant. And if you click on either of those, you will land on the next page, which is the Google Analytics 4 Property Setup Assistant. Now, there's the first word here that is different going forward. So the property word here is something that we're going to get very familiar with as we go through this, because Google will see your account and setup for your website as a property. So that's what they're describing when they talk about the word property. It's the interaction between their software, their platform, their analytics, their algorithms, and your website. So your website is a property. Now, it will say you are currently using a universal analytics property. So this is an existing website. To join the future of analytics, to set up a Google for property below, click one of these two buttons. Now, we are going to click the button that is the default, which is I want to create a new Google Analytics 4 property. So I'm making the assumption that you haven't done this before. So you are going to click on that Get Started button. Okay, so this is where you are going to be beginning the journey of setting this up. So you click on the button, and where do you go? Well, it's done for you. That is it. They will automatically assign you a Google Analytics 4 property by literally just clicking that button and saying, yes, I'll have one, please. So behind the scenes, Google has then made an association. It knows what your website is, and it's made an identifier based around your existing setup. So it is really quite simple, of course. Now, if anybody out there knows Google, you will know that actually, from a user perspective, it probably isn't quite as simple as that. And of course, it isn't. So what you'll be then thinking about doing is pressing the big blue button, which is go to your GA4 property. Now, the clue between this and the current version can be seen on the very far left-hand side of the screen. See all those little icons on the left-hand side of the screen there? Those are the ones that you will be familiar with. But as you then migrate towards the new property, so this new version, the GA4, Google Analytics 4, you will see that those have changed. So rather than have 7 or 8 of those little icons, you'll see now there are basically 3 core icons plus home plus a setup and settings one. So this tells you now you are in the GA4 section, if you like, of your analytics. And I'll show you how you get to this when you come back in again the next time in just a moment. So at the moment, we're still in the setup assistant, and it will say, okay, this is great. Things are going well. We're still in the setup phase, but look, we're not actually collecting any data yet. So it's created this property for you. But it's now saying to you, okay, but you need to tell me a little bit more. You need to kind of describe to me what it is you want to collect, what it is that you want to stream into your Google Analytics 4 account, into this property, because otherwise it will just sit there as a as a reference point within Google Analytics. Now, we want to obviously supply it with some kind of information, some kind of data stream. So what I'm going to ask you to do at this point then is to click over on that left column there. You can see the word data streams. I've highlighted it there in red. So it is the one that's marked there as data stream. So we need to tell Google Analytics 4 what data streams we want to feed into this so that we can grab it. Now you can see before you click on anything, it says no data received in the past 48 hours because we haven't actually told it what we want it to be collecting. Now you can click on iOS, so you might just want it to be clicking on stuff that comes through from mobile phones, or you might want it to come through on Android phones, but you could click on all. But what we recommend, and what Google tutorials always recommend, is that if you click on web, because actually it is the broader website, which of course is accessed through a whole range of devices, tablets, mobile, and obviously on desktop as well. So when you click on this line, this row that you can see here has got this GA4 where it says no data received in the past 48 hours because we are still in the process of setting this up, you will get to a point which says, oh, okay, well, we're there, kind of, it's done. And then you can actually then basically look at the various criteria that you're sort of seeing on this page. So this is the web stream details. Now it's saying it's not active for your website. So basically what it's done is it said, thank you very much. I can now see that you want to collect the web stream. So we've created a data web stream. So it's all very simple. We've just literally clicked yes, yes, accept, yes. So we haven't actually done anything technical here. We've just followed this setup assistant and we've got to this page. Now there's two things which are really important on this page. One is to note the yellow row there, which says, okay, data collection isn't actually active for your website. And this is basically saying we've kind of set it up at our side. This is Google telling you this, but what you actually need to do is you need to work some magic on your side to create the other end of this stream. So we know what you want to collect, but now you've got to tell your website to start pushing information down into this stream. Now there's two ways that you can do this. You can do this depending on the current setup and depending on how much access you have to the back end of your website. You can do one or two things. I'm going to show you these things. The key thing here is this new criteria. Normally, it was always done on script. So you would get some coding from Google and you would embed that into the header of your website. And it's basically some script that tells the website it's okay when Google comes searching, you can release this information because we're only using it for Google Analytics. That's what the code used to say. We've also got code for GA4, so there is a similar kind of process, but we've also got this thing that you can see here on the page, which is a measurement ID. Now, obviously, because of security, I've partially covered up this full measurement ID, but just see it there towards the top of the page in the right-hand corner. Copy and paste that measurement ID because you will need that in a little while. So that's your next step here. And what we're doing here is we're starting to tell the website that we are going to be releasing information into this data stream that's going to end up in GA4 so we can get these lovely reports out. Because at the moment, our website is sat there just pushing stuff through to the existing Universal Analytics, Google Analytics, so the older version, the current legacy version. So we need to tell it that it's okay to send information to GA4. So we're kind of creating this pipeline. So the Google end of it is now set up, is now created. And we knew that because it gave us a measurement ID. So that's the bit at the Google end that says, yep, okay, we've got the stream ready. So now we've got to go into our website and start to enable the pushing of this data through and down this stream to GA4. So the next thing you've done by clicking on that button on that previous screen is you will be getting now instructions for installing this on your website. And there's two ways, in fact, there are three ways that you can do this. And I'm going to show you the simplest way if you've got a WordPress website in just a moment. And statistically, most of you will have a WordPress website. But if you have a website builder with any of these, from Wix to Drupal to Monster Insights, etc., if you recognize any of those, click those buttons and it will then do that automatically. Okay, so you're in the winning enclosure if you've got any of those. Now, for most of us, we are going to probably have to follow a very kind of old school format and be clicking on the install manually. And what that will do, and you can see on the screen here now, I've just clicked across, rather than install with a website builder, I've gone to install manually. And you can see there, that's the code that I was talking about that needs to go into the header of your website. Now, if this is all talking a completely different language to the language you understand, then you will need your web developer to do this. It is a relatively straightforward exercise for the web developer. They will be used to doing this. If you have access to the back end of your website, you can do it. Okay, so you're literally putting this code, so in between those two tags, the scripts there, you're copying and pasting that into the header, or immediately after the header rather, or that header tag on your website, and then you've in essence created the front end of this data stream, and then all your data can then flow down that stream into GA4. Now, you'd think that was simple, wouldn't you? But for a lot of us, we don't have the access to the header element of our website, because for some of us, we have developed a website using WordPress. And WordPress, if you're using the basically WordPress.com, doesn't necessarily, based on your template, give you access to that. So how can we do it? Well, we can use a plugin, and this is my recommended route. If you have a WordPress website, this is by far and away the simplest way to embed the front end of this data stream into your website so that it can then start passing information to GA4. Okay, so if you have a WordPress website, go to your plugins page, look for new plugins, and then put into the search bar, as I have here on the screen, Google Analytics 4. And then if you press return, what you will find is that there are a lot of opportunities to download a whole bunch of different widgets and plugins that enable you to use GA4 on your website. Now, the one I'm going to recommend here, because I found this one to be very simple, very intuitive, and I'll show you the screen grab of it, just how simple it is. Anybody, including me, can do it. That go for the GA Google Analytics by a developer called Jeff Starr. Okay, this has been downloaded over 600,000 times and has got 5-star reviews over 144 times. So this is a very popular, very, very well downloaded piece of software. And this will embed a little plugin into your WordPress website that will enable you to then, as you activate it, go to this page, the settings page. And it is as simple as pasting in that measurement ID that I showed you, and I said, copy and paste this one, that measurement ID, which was the front end bit of GA4 within Google Analytics, which is kind of Google's end of this data stream. You're going to plug in here by putting into the GA tracking ID, that very same measurement ID. Then the important thing you have to do in the tracking method, you don't want, by default, it will be, the button will be Universal Analytics. That will be the button that is showing. So when you press save, what the stream that will be set up will be assuming that it's the old form of analytics. So make sure when you've put in your measurement ID into that red box, the GA tracking ID, that you then tick in the next section down the Google tag checkbox. Okay, so this is your Google tag, your measurement ID for GA4. So Universal Analytics was the old version or the current version of Google Analytics. By putting in Google tag and your measurement ID into the GA tracking ID box, you've just told your website that it needs to send GA4 related data down this data stream that will get picked up by that measurement ID in Google Analytics to create all these reports. And then all you do literally is just press save and continue. And that is it. You now have a fully functioning website with a fully functioning 2 versions of Google Analytics. Now, here's a screen grab of, and ignore the blue thing at the top. This was, I grabbed this screen grab before refreshing the page. So ignore that. It's basically, I don't need to click on the let's go at the top there. That is one that you could just click dismiss, because you've now got 2 properties. So you can see that I've got a property here for this website near. I've got a property here which starts off UA. Okay, so that's the Universal Analytics property, and that is the existing one. So that's the stream of reports and Google Analytics that we've been used to. Okay, so if you see any Google Analytics report that's got UA at the start, that's the old stroke current version. The new version is the one that's below it, and you can see that it's got -GA4 after it. And so when we get to the 1st of July 2023, the old versions will literally just disappear and everything will look just GA4. But for now, we can look at both versions. So if you want any kind of legacy reporting, so reporting back to the point when you actually embedded Google Analytics on your website, you can see that right the way back to the dawn of time of your website. The GA4 counting, because we've only literally just a few moments ago here in this example set up this data stream, it will only start counting from the minute that you clicked save on that previous page. So you've opened the stream and the data is coming through. Question mark, or is it? Because what you haven't done yet is actually test it. And that's going to be a very interesting and the first thing that Google recommends that you do. So how do you test it? Well, the very first thing you can do is you can, on that previous slide, literally click on, I'll just go back to that previous slide, literally click on where it says there, the name of the website, -GA4. Click on that and you will go through to a page. If you click then on real time, you will then go to the real-time overview of the data stream that you have just clicked on and just set up. Okay, so you are now in Google Analytics 4 and you are in a real-time view of the traffic that is happening on your website that is coming down through this new data stream that you've just opened up. You set it up at the Google end, you've just embedded that measurement ID using that plugin, or you've embedded the script just after the header tag on your website. So now you've opened this data stream. Now, if this says 0, if it's not tracking any real-time traffic, when you personally then also log into the website, so pick up your phone and go to your website, you should see mobile traffic coming through because it should be you, the visit that you're doing there on your mobile phone. Open up another tab on your browser, and that tab on your browser should, when you go to your own website, should click on the should show up desktop, and that's exactly what I did here. So moments, and it literally was, I would say, a minute or 2 after opening up that data stream, after clicking yes to that measurement ID to open it up from the website, starting to send data through, I thought, right, we need to go into the real-time overview and see if it's working. This is where you see if it's working or not. Now, sometimes there could be a little bit of a delay. So having created that stream, you might need to go away, make a coffee, come back to it a few moments later, but it should be pretty much instant. Okay, the lovely thing about this now is that they've figured out you're going to want to know pretty quickly whether or not this is relevant and current information coming through, and whether or not you need to go back in and maybe have a tweak of the settings. But this is what happens if everything is set up in the way I've described it. So you should see 2 versions if you've logged into your website on a desktop and you've logged into your website on a mobile. Now, of course, you might see 3 or 4 users come through in the last 30 minutes, and maybe that's other people coming in. But just make sure that you go to maybe a slightly obscure page on your site and go and check that you can see that in the page views. Okay, because then you'll know that's you, and you'll know that this is really counting real-time data. And as you move through the site, you'll see those views by page changing, and they'll be changing in accordance with where you are and you're browsing, both on your mobile and on your desktop. So that is a very, very simple, and again, this is so intuitive. Why wouldn't you want to look at real-time data when you've just set something up for your website? Of course, you'd want to know instantly. So that has been a really, really important first feature. It didn't used to work this quickly and smoothly in the old form of Google Analytics. So really, really plus side in terms of the way that they've set this up. Okay, so what other stuff are you going to see? Well, once you set this up, you will see that there are a number of new features on the left-hand side. It's kind of similar, but it's a little bit different. Okay, there are some features that are missing. If you were ever using something called visitor flow has gone. Behavior flow, as it used to be called as well. If you've been used to tracking the flow of your visitors through your website based around a customer journey that you've plotted and then seeing if that's the reality in your website. Well, unfortunately, in the way that used to be presented, which was very much a representation of the journey, that is now gone in the new version. So for those of us obsessed with customer journey, and if you know me well, you'll know I am, it's going to be a very different beast working with GA4, but I'll explain to you very, very briefly in a moment how we can get around this, because there's some very neat little features of GA4. But let's start at the beginning. Let's look at user. I always think it should be visitor acquisition, but they're still called in techie speak user acquisition. So the people who are using our website. Let's look at some of the stuff that comes out as defaults, initial kind of reports. And I haven't been in here to customize yet any of this reporting. This is the default reporting on GA4. So this is what you'll see when you go in. You will see a breakdown of the acquisition. In other words, how did people arrive at our website? They could have come through via paid search. They could have come through via some organic search, or they could have come direct because they knew the website address. Now, irrespective of the numbers, let's look a little bit further down in the table. So we're not really interested specifically in the numbers. We're just looking for the kinds of things that we're going to now be seeing as standard reporting in GA4 that's different to what we're used to. Now, here it's all about engagement. Okay, so there will be an engagement rate, not just visitors, not just kind of where they went, but how engaged were they? There's lots of very, very clever algorithms going on in the background that will look at how engaged people are with the content on your website. Now, let's face it. If we've been relying on vanity metrics of things like, I got 10,000 people through this particular page, aren't I a clever marketer? When actually they could have just clicked straight the way through and actually not really stuck at all to learn what information was on there. It hasn't really been a very useful measure or metric. Whereas now engagement rate starts to really test us out and really, really put the cat amongst the pigeons here to say, well, okay, and actually, how much are people engaging, properly engaging? This isn't a vanity metric with our information, our content, our videos, our written words, our images. And also, how much engagement in the sessions that we have is actually spent in physical time through each of these different incoming channels. So there will be a difference between people who come through via a paid search. So somebody might be doing pay-per-click on Google sort of PPC, for example. And in this particular example here, the average engagement time on the pages that we're rating here is only 29 seconds. But look at the organic search. It's double, actually. So if people are organically visiting, their engagement time, not just visit time, but engagement time, the way that they are moving around on that page, the way that they're clicking on stuff, the way that they are really genuinely interested in this content is double than the visitors who have come through via paid. So I'm not going to interpret that at this stage, but I'm just going to say it's interesting, isn't it, that there are differences. But this word engagement is absolutely key here, because this is a very new style of getting us to think a little bit more differently about how people are interacting with our content. And here's another new word. Now, this is an absolutely key word. I said the first word was property, the fact that your website is a property. Well, here's another totally key word here, and this is the word event. because all of Google Analytics in GA4 is going to be based around events. And we as marketers, as digital content producers, are going to need to get really sharp and really savvy over the way that we define not only how we move people through our web pages and through our website to ideally an end destination that we want them to get to, but actually all of the events that they might encounter en route. Now, look at some of these events. These are really interesting new styles of the way we're going to interact with Google Analytics in the future. Okay, we haven't got the visitor flow. We can't see where they go necessarily at a simple kind of first glance, but look at some of these things. An event is a scroll. So how do we want to define that as marketer? An event could be a file download. An event could be a first visit. It could be that this is the first time this particular person has visited this page, and then what do they do? What is their next event? Is it a scroll? Is it a click? Is it something else? So we are going to have to get really granular with the journey that we want to choreograph for our visitors. And then we can start to think of every little nuance within that journey as being a specific event. And then define that event, because we can report on those events. And now this is much more granular. Rather than just looking at it at a page level, we're able to look at the constituent parts, the elements of that page, and maybe set as events, maybe set some target conversions based around individual events, i.e. individual things that somebody might do on that page. So this is getting really, really interesting, because if you're the kind of marketer who likes to create different journeys and different experiences for different personas who visit your website, well, this is going to be really good news to you, because it could be that for person A, you want them to scroll, then click, then go somewhere here. But for person B, you want them to scroll, you want them to download, and you want them to stay. So you can do different or set different event targets for different individuals as they come onto your page. Wow. No longer vanity metrics are relevant here, but you can see kind of where this is going. This is very much about intimate relationships with your website visitors. And that whole word, that whole phrase that I've used many, many times over the years, professional intimacy. Well, this is Google really starting to put it into place. Okay, what other things can we see? Well, you can do, and I've blanked this out for privacy reasons, I blanked out the actual names of the pages, but you can do the deep dives into pages and see kind of, how many people are coming onto the pages, all the typical usual stuff. But look at this, by page, we have average engagement time. So not just dwell time on the page, but average engagement time. And you'll notice that at this point, there's been no mention of bounce rate. Bounce, which was one of those things that marketers really, really understood as being, quite a useful indicator of where people got to a page on a particular site, but then they wouldn't go anywhere else. They would literally bounce away from the website and go somewhere else. That was always a really good negative indicator of how well your page was reporting. Bounce in Google Analytics 4 has gone. So Google is saying, actually, bounce is now an obsolete thing. What we want you to do, marketers, is to really double down on engagement. We want people to stay on the website, get great value through doing specific choreographed events on particular pages. And so we want to see the average engagement time being one of your key performance indicators, because it will show and demonstrate that those events are relevant for those people that you're targeting. So it's a subtly different, but potentially hugely powerful new way of using Google Analytics. And of course, a lot of the traditional features that we will have known and loved, breaking down all of our data and our reporting into particular territories. So yes, you can do deep dives into the country of origin of this particular visitor. And of course, you can go deeper than that and deeper still. So yes, you will be able to get it down to a city level and the like. Again, I'm not going to go down into that level of explanation in this particular session. This is much more about talking about the differences between GA4 and existing. But look again there. What are we looking at here? Yes, we are looking at visitors from these particular geographic territories, but also instantly is all about engagement, the engagement of sessions from those visitors. So those visitors who visited the website but didn't really engage, they're getting swiped away on some of these reports. And the doubling down on people who are actually physically active on your site, that's where the data is really coming through. So yes, there'll be filters, yes, stuff that you can take in and out, but it's all about really carefully thinking about, who do I want? What do I want them to do? And then what do I want to know about actually what they did? So we've got to be really mindful in the way that we are looking to construct our analytics based around the actual reporting that we want to do. And of course, there is all of the usual stuff, hidden in the background that we would normally sort of expect. And things like the tech overview, where we were able to see the difference in the balance between mobile access and desktop access and tablet access. Yeah, all of those kinds of things are still in there, but they're kind of hidden a little bit further down. You can see just by the definitions of the traffic feeds and the traffic reporting here on the left-hand side. And these are the report snapshots, because you can do much deeper dives into all of these things and customize all of the reporting. This is the default reporting that gets you started. But you can see here the three areas. There's real time, that's a key one. There's life cycle, which is all about those events, creating and crafting those events for the visitors. And then there's stuff about user, let's call them visitor, but Google calls them user. Some of the more demographic and tech information that may well support the refinement of the targeting of your report. So you can say, I just want to know about this person or this definition of person and what they do, where they go, how much engagement they have, and on which pieces of content. So there's a lot of really interesting and exciting stuff going on here. But the key for me, the key single word here, well, there are two key words really. One is event, because it's not just about page visits and then where people move around. It's down to the level of a click or a scroll. So really understanding how you're building and making up your pages going forward is going to be critical. Super exciting, but super complex and complicated. So we'll talk about that as we go into next year and as this becomes, much more relevant to all of us on a day-to-day basis. And then the other word after event is this word engagement. And I think we all know, if we're being really, really honest with ourselves, that actually that is what we really need to know. We don't need to know those vanity metrics of the big numbers of visitors to our website. We need to know who's actually engaging and why and where. And so by combining engagement with events, we can see that how many people actually engaged with this piece of content and then were engaged enough to download this particular white paper or this particular brochure. So by creating our reports at that kind of level, and you can go deeper, you can go way, way deeper, but at a surface level, this is GA4. This is what we're going to see. And hopefully then our reporting and then our reporting back to our organizations, not just of the information, but of the intelligence, the kind of what does this really mean in terms of our decision making and our continuous improvement of marketing is going to get more and more accurate. So this was an overview of GA4. Okay, so I know that this has been fast, it's been furious, and it's kind of probably left you with more questions than answers. And that's kind of intentional, because I just wanted to give you a flavor of how to set it up, where to test it, and then a quick look at some of the early features. But I know you'll want to do a deeper dive. So I went around the web and was looking for some of the better tutorials on this so that you can do in your own time a better, deeper dive than we've just kind of scratched the surface here in this session. So the one I'd recommend you to go to is infront.com/blog, and then they've got /everything you need to know about switching to Google Analytics 4. Okay, so that doesn't roll off the tongue, so you might need to just literally copy and paste what you can see on screen here. But this was a very, very good tutorial and a step-by-step guide to some of the differences that you're going to encounter. And so I'm just going to summarize these now, just to kind of leave you with the things that I would suggest to focus on once you've done those first few steps in terms of using the setup assistant and then embedding that thing so that you can create that data stream, the link between Google Analytics 4 and your website. So let's assume you've been through that process, you followed it step by step in the most appropriate way for your website. So now how can you leverage these new features? Well, there are some automatic events, and I'm showing you a few of those as we've gone through it. So the automatic events that will come through here, these are the things that are already set up for you. The first visit, the page views, the session starting point, and then this user or visitor engagement. Okay, so those things are already set up for you. And there are some enhanced measurement features that allow you to track some of these events automatically. So Google is assuming that you will be interested in the outbound clicks. So where on a particular page did people click and where are they going next? File downloads. A lot of us try and add a next level of detail with things like brochures, etc., on our websites now. So those file downloads, those are at the enhanced measurement level as far as Google is concerned. So that would be an event that you could be looking at. Site search, this is an interesting one as an event that's automatically included. You know, within your site, if you have a search feature, it will be gathering that data and it'll be able to report back to you what kinds of searches are happening on your website. That could get very interesting for future content, future new products and services. So if you've got a big, fat, complex site that, you know, you've got a lot of products and services on there, it's quite tricky to navigate because of the breadth or depth of it, then you can use that site search enhanced measurement feature, which is an optional additional event that will automatically capture those search terms. You can then be thinking of maybe SEO, how to position some of the content that you've got there better, more effectively, and or introduce new products and services into the site if people are searching on something that you don't yet have. And of course, engagement with things like video. We know through all our social insights that video is huge. And if you don't have video on your website, what are you missing out on? Well, now you're going to know, and you're going to be able to then monitor the events, see if there's a desire, see if there is a very high engagement rate with maybe some test videos that you put on certain select pages and watch how people engage. Maybe you do A/B testing, split testing, as we call it, where on one page, pretty identical to another, you have a video. The second page, you don't have the video, you have something else in place. But bar that, everything else is the same. Look at the differences between those two pages. What do you see? Because split testing within Google Analytics 4 is going to really enable you to continuously improve what you have. And then there will be some automated features that allow you to build some custom events, which are really applicable if you have, you know, an e-commerce site, for example. There will be very, very specific things that you will want to be adding into your GA4. I'm not going to go into those today. That will be for another time. But just know that the site Google Analytics 4 is set up automatically to create some of these early benchmarks for you, so you can get a flavor and a taste of the kinds of things that you might want to look after. Now, here's a word of warning, okay? This is a massive difference to what you've been used to. Universal Analytics, the current version of Google Analytics that you are using right here, right now, that is going to run parallel to your GA4 account, this new data stream that you've just set up, Universal Analytics would have unlimited data within it. So you could go back, as I say, right to the start of the data that was flowing through your website. In GA4, it will only store up to 14 months of data, and it will not carry over your historical data from Universal Analytics. GA4 only starts tracking data once you've upgraded. So do not delay. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, I'd like to go for this. This sounds really good. I want to make sure we've got something ready for next year. Do it now. There is no transfer over of the old analytics. Your old analytics will be gone. So before the end of June next year, if there are any historic reports that you want to capture or export, you need to do them out of Universal Analytics, because you will not get access to that data from there on. And GA4 cannot grab that data. So it will only start counting this fresh data, and it will only store it for up to a maximum of 14 months. Okay, so the old ways of being able to get data that was 2-3 years ago. Oh, let's compare our data October this year to October 3 years ago, pre-pandemic. You cannot do in GA4. Okay, so this is about a whole different mindset of how we're going to be using it. So there's lots of great new features, lots of great stuff, but know this is going to be much more within year and much more real time than you've ever done it before. So grab all that legacy data before it's too late. That is really, really important. And when you've done this, notice that there are some things that you really do need to do to make sure that you're optimizing this initial data stream that you've just set up. First thing is to filter internal traffic. After you've done that real-time check of whether or not that data stream is working, make sure that then you switch off your own IP address. It's quite straightforward in the settings of GA4 to be able to take out your IP, your Internet Protocol setting within Google Analytics 4 so that it doesn't track your visits to the website. So you get a really pure version coming through of the reports. Remember as well that GA4's default retention period is just 2 months. It will switch off data after 2 months unless you increase the data retention setting in GA4 settings up to its maximum of 14 months. So that's what I would recommend you do. The first two things is to make sure you're getting pure data by filtering out internal traffic from your IP address. And the second thing to do is to increase the data retention, the amount of data that GA4 is going to hold from this data stream that is now pumping in from your website, set it up to the maximum of 14 months. And it will be starting to count as of today if you set up today. But by default, it will only be holding the last 2 months of data if you don't do anything else. So how are you feeling? How does this all feel? This has probably opened up so many more questions and so many more sort of uncertainties and unknowns. But the trick and the key here right now is to make this happen today. Okay, it's going to be too late. The longer you leave this, the less data you are collecting. So do make sure that you're capturing all of that GA4 data as soon as you possibly can by setting up that data stream or getting your developer to do it, and then mark it as maximum data retention 14 months, because that's what you're going to need to do. The old version of Google Analytics, you can still be reporting up to the end of June next year, but the two things are not compatible. They will not cross-reference data at all. But the interesting thing you could play with between now and then is when you run your reports on the old current version and then look at the reports on GA4, what differences are you seeing? Are there differences? Maybe some of the settings are going to create little nuances, little pieces and little pockets of information that could be really, really fascinating for you.